Hey, it's John with you. How are you doing? 2000. Hi,
Hi,
Mary.
Sam. Hi, I'm checking my audio.
Yeah, you are good.
Okay, thank you.
You might have a feedback a little.
You hear feedback?
Yeah, a little bit. You have your audio on your laptop?
I do, and that's the only place I have it on.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I just sent you an email on the rest of the
Ye-
council.
I was just getting ready to open it. Yes.
Yeah. Ted had asked for some information and with regards to city finance and hiring, recent hires. So I
Yes.
think it's wise that I send it, I share it to the entire council. There is personal information, so we ask that we don't share it.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem. Ms. Perazzo, I don't think we're going to have Karen this evening. Can you please chair city development and planning for
No
us?
problem. Sure.
Thank you. For the council member who just joined us, I just forwarded an email to you. Can you please check your email for some informational attachment? Mr. Palomini, would you mind check with the two invitees for the Rose Garden discussion if they're having any difficulty signing on before
Sure.
we start?
key aspects of our strategic plan. Students learn more about themselves and the world, both in and beyond the classroom. Faculty excelled in research and scholarship that enabled them to contribute substantially.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Schenectady City Council Committee meeting for Monday, September the 8th, 2020 to order. And we'll go into finance. So Mr. Palomini.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is to approve the contract between the City of Schenectady and the Community Loan Fund, with the CARES Act, with Derek Gugamuk. Is Derek online?
Yes, can you hear me, John?
Yes, can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, so the contract between the City of Schenectady and Community Loan Fund, this is part of the economic recovery portion of the CDBG CV funds of $350,000. With this budget, we're looking to approve tonight $250,000, and we will be working with the Community Loan Fund. This will help the city local businesses that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Right now, we're looking to part of this money will be providing technical assistance, workshops, soft skills development to local businesses. Part of what the Community Loan Fund will be doing is providing assistance for the local business to apply for these grant applications, grant funds, the amount of $2,500 to $10,000. So approximately 52 businesses will be, will be helped by this assistance. So we do recommend that the city will contract with the Community Loan Fund.
Are there any questions or comments?
Mr. Palomini.
Mr. Palomini?
I think two were speaking at the same times, but I see Ms. Porterfield, so go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Palomini, yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Derek? Derek, yes. I wanted to ask you a question about what the criteria is, because it's not a huge sum of money, but you're saying that 52 businesses. So I just want to be clear that these are small businesses that you're talking about. They have to be under, go ahead.
If you look at it, if you look at 2.5K to the total 210,000, that's 84 businesses. If it's, 10,000, it would be 21 businesses. So average would be around 52, depending on how much is allocated to each business, local business within the city of Schenectady. There was, I don't know if you could see it in your notes. There's forms that were posted about the application that the Community Loan Fund will be using.
Okay.
So there's businesses will have.
Hey, Derek, you're breaking up very badly, and there's a lot of shuffling of papers, and nobody can hear what you're saying. If you could redo that part, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
So approximately, if you look at it, the grant funding is from $2,500 to $10,000. So I broke it out. If each business received $2,500 of the $210,000, that'd be 84 that would be assisted by this 210,000 grant monies. If it's if it's 10,000 per business, would be 21. So I just averaged those two numbers, and I got 52 businesses approximately by these grant money.
I'm sorry, but my question was, do the businesses have to meet certain criteria? So they have to be, must be small businesses under a certain amount of employees. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I can't recall the exact criteria offhand. Let me see if I could find that quickly for you.
This is Avi Epstein from development as well. If I could just jump in here.
Go ahead.
The number is 50 full-time employees or below, so we are looking at small businesses. It would also discount franchise businesses, so those wouldn't be eligible for these funds as well. So the goal here is to look at small local businesses, and those were the businesses that we included in our original survey information as well.
All right. And just one other follow-up question. Is this restricted to MWBEs or can it be any small business?
There is no restriction for it to just be MWBEs. However, we were looking for those who are eligible, and that was one of the criteria that we would hope to provide loans to. But not being a MWBE would not disqualify you from those funding sources.
Thank you.
Mr. Palomino.
Go ahead, Mr. Mudavaran.
Couple of things, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we're asking here to approve $250,000. Out of this $250,000, $40,000 out of this $250,000 is going for what I would sum it up as administrative costs, workshop training, financial development, pretty much admin costs. So overall, $220,000 is being available for small business. So not $250,000. So my first concern is $40,000 out of $250,000. That seems pretty large for just workshop training and technical assistance for such a small amount of money. And we should look at how we should be able to align this money to benefit small business rather than incurring so much cost.
Okay.
The other concern I have is that looking at the list of small business, there are some business here that I don't think it's small. Then there are some business that doesn't belong to Schenectady. Are we just focusing on Schenectady business only? Then if that's the case, there are some business here that should not be on this list. And then there are several other businesses that fall up on this portfolio. But if the criteria is not MWBE or requirement, then why weren't the other business establishments on this list? We have several small businesses in Schenectady that is not on this list. And why that is happening?
Okay. Derek or Avi, could you please answer that?
So the list that's just provided was created, correct me if I'm wrong, Avi, but we received this list from Ron Gardner, and it's just a survey to see what businesses, what they need, what's needed from this, to move forward for their operations since they've been hit from the COVID-19 pandemic. Avi, can you expand on that?
Yeah, that's correct. The list that was provided is only from those who have responded to the initial survey. There was roughly 60 local small businesses, many of which are not MWBE, that were surveyed as well. However, they hadn't responded or they didn't fill out everything that was in the survey. So we hadn't included all of that information since we didn't get anything back from them. But to the point of the technical assistance and the workshops, the reason those items were included for the amount that they are is when the Economic Recovery Task Force first was convened to look at what was needed and how we could leverage the COVID funds at hand from HUD. the number one issue that was identified was a lack of skills, soft skills from local small businesses to access, state and federal funding. Through multiple discussions with business owners, we realized that in order to, one, provide the funds necessary, but also to give these businesses an opportunity to seek funding elsewhere, if and when they were to get grants from the city, they really need to be, we need to be bolstering their soft skills, financial literacy, and so on. So many of those within this, within the admin portion of it are actually small businesses. There are 10 small businesses that are all MWBs that were identified as part of this task force and technical assistance component. So not only would they be providing training for other businesses within the city of Schenectady, but we're also helping, provide some resources to local businesses directly.
Mr. Palamani.
Go ahead, Ms. Barraza.
If I may, Ms. Barraza, I have like 2 more follow-up, and then if I may, please.
It's Ms. Barraza, your call. Would you like to go or hold?
No, that's fine. I'll hold.
Okay, Mr. Mudavaren. John?
No, I'm going to jump in because I think my question may have an impact on Mr. Mudavaren and what his concerns are. Am I correct in the fact that these companies have not been selected to receive grants? Rather, they were surveyed to see what companies needed, but companies still need to go through the application process to the Community Loan Fund?
That's correct. This is a list that is representative of companies that might qualify for this proposal. And the other aspect that Avi was talking about is a lot of these small businesses are overwhelmed by the paperwork or the application process for some of the other programs that have come out at the federal level or even the state level. So the training component would be able to get people educated and confident enough to fill out or work with them to fill out applications for funding or assistance at other levels that they might qualify for.
Thank you.
Mr. Mudavaren, does your volume work now?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
So I just want to follow up with that. I mean, sorry I have to go back in time, but I mean, the last round of CDBG, I mean, we were told by administration that City Council will get more involved in terms of how we go about doing business in terms of allocation. And here we are making another set of rounds of allocation. City Council were not involved. I received a call from Mr. Alex Sutherland last Friday, talking about and apologizing that the City Council were not involved in this round of allocation, and he looked forward to going forward to engage the council. We have been hearing that too often, how the council is going to get engaged and the council is not being engaged in the allocation of these things there. And I'm worried about, a list of business, some of that Schenectady business, and then we're excluding some of them, and then we're going to send this list over to the agency that's going to administer this funding, and we're paying them $40,000 to allocate $210,000. I think something is wrong here.
We're not paying them.
We need to do better.
Mr. Palamani?
Go ahead. Well, let him answer, and then Ms. Barraza, you can go ahead.
Thank you.
We're not paying $40,000. We're paying 5% to administer, which is $12,500.
Okay, Ms. Barraza?
I just don't think Mr. Mudavaren is seeing this correctly. Number one, we're paying them a 5% administrative fee. Number two, they're providing training to businesses. So they're not only giving the business a fish, but they're teaching the business how to fish, which is a very important thing for small business. It's very, very valuable to them. And third, no one has been allocated anything yet. What we're doing is we're allowing the Community Loan Fund, which has a tried and true practice of shepherding business forward with good business plans and business needs and this and that and the other thing, we're responsibility. This is not a list that we're funding. This is a survey to determine what businesses need. And then businesses will then apply to the Community Loan Fund, who are truly the experts in this situation, and they'll administer the grants. So it's not the council not being involved in who's getting the money, and then we're not paying them $40,000. We're paying them a small administrative fee, and then they're providing very valuable training to small business. So I'm in total support of this.
Yeah, I would agree with Ms. Perazzo. Are there any other comments or questions?
Yes, Mr. Falmani, I have several here.
Go ahead, Mr. Kosher.
Thank you. So how was this notified? Was this advertised in the Gazette? How was the notification process? I know you touched on it a little bit through affirmative action, but was that the only outreach that we did? Didn't this publicly have to be in the paper or the Gazette listed? Anybody? Okay, there's my answer to that question. All right,
Well,
next question.
That's not true. We've gone through this. So Avi or Derek, to the specific publication of the public notice on this part of the funding?
Yeah, so the general funding has been, it was noted, there's a public notice for this. For these individual pieces, there's not a requirement for each section in here for that to be published separately, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
All right, can we have the dates that this was listed in the Gazette and a copy of what was listed in the Gazette for this, please? Sent to us. All right, and again, to follow up with Mr. Motiverin's question, several of these addresses are not located in the city of Schenectady. So I don't know if it's Avi or Derek, whoever can answer. How were they selected when their when their business is not in the city of Schenectady itself?
Yeah, so the businesses listed on that survey, again, it's just a survey. It's not businesses that would necessarily be eligible. It's outreach to find out what the city can do for people. There's also addresses that are listed on the survey because someone might have a different business address than where they might reside in the city, or vice versa. It could be an address they're using for where they reside, but their business might be operating within the city. The list that was originally generated was pulled by using a database to pull the MWBE information. And as Derek was saying earlier, the information originally came from Ron Gardner's office, from other local businesses that he has been working with in the past.
All right, and again, looking at your columns in your spreadsheet, it clearly says business address, and it has everybody listed there under business address. And again, to that point, I really want that clarified, figuring this out. We also have one individual here who is listed 3 times, 3 different companies and 2 different addresses. Have you looked into that yet, or is there any research done into that one?
So, well, Mr. Coach, can I just, I'm sorry, Mr. Palomini, can I speak to that?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I had the same question, but as you stated, Mr. Kosher, it said business address. So obviously this individual, because I think we're talking about the same one, has more than one business and they're located at different addresses. So hence the 3 different addresses. But I had some of the similar concerns and questions, but I clearly understand now that this is just a survey, and any allocations, they would have to meet the criteria that are put forth in what we, as a city, say. And if city residency is a part of that requirement, then that's what we're going to do. But this isn't the complete list, and it isn't necessarily a list that they're going to allocate money to. It's simply for those who responded to the survey. So I understand you, because we do need a starting place. So I understand all of that, and that this is not actually a grant application that's been completed, and we're approving money to whatever number and list is on this survey. So
if John or whoever, if you could clear this up for me. So Mr. Palomini, so is this, we're just approving $250,000 for the folks to go ahead, screen these individual businesses, and then they will come back and show us dollar amounts with exact allocations for each of these businesses before we get a final vote? Is that semi-correct?
Not how I'm understanding it, but Avi or go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'm asking the council to approve the 250,000 for the community loan fund. They would take the applications, review them, and see that they meet the criteria that is outlined in the material that's been provided to council, and then award those grants. As it's been outlined in the $2,500 level, maybe a little bit larger, depending on what the needs and what they articulate, in conjunction with doing some education and training so that they may be able to apply for other funding, primarily at the federal level. There may also be some state programs that are out there that Community Loan Fund would help them work through the paperwork and guide them through the process.
I think Ms. Patrick, you were trying to chime in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think in the materials that we were provided, a lot of this information is there. And I think that the application deadline is in October or early October. So again, just to reiterate, what we are hearing is that these were just organizations that were surveyed for what their needs would be and how the money would be spent then to do the training and the education. And I think we all would agree that this process to try to become an MWBE, just that alone, is so complex that being able to give our smaller businesses in Schenectady, which is also stated in the materials that they have to, reside in Schenectady, that would be a really good thing. So I'm fully in support of this allocation. I just wanted to give my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's how I understood the documents as well. Are there any other questions or comments?
Well, Mr. Palmetti, Ed Kosher again.
Yeah, go ahead.
I truly can't support this to the rest of my colleagues here without seeing the exact businesses that we're going to be allocating the funds to. As I said, there's at least 5 on here that don't have addresses listed in the city of Schenectady, and one actually isn't even in the darn county. Listen, I'm all for small businesses. And we were part of the whole group that hired a full-time affirmative action officer. So again, I'm not going to support this without the additional information and processing going through further with some dollar amounts to these agencies.
Mr. Palomini.
Go ahead, Ms. Porterfield.
Okay, Mr. Kosher, we're not allocating to these businesses. That's not what's happening here. What we're doing is allocating the money to the Community Loan Fund. We'll have specific criteria. Included in that criteria is the fact that you must be a city business, is what I understand. So this is not a list that says tomorrow you will be getting money. These individuals still have to go through the application process that's put forth by the Community Loan Fund, which I've seen it, and it's not like just signing your name on a piece of paper. You have to provide background information and all these things that attest to the fact that you actually have a small business. So what we're doing tonight is just saying to the Community Loan Fund, yes, we allocate these funds, and then they have to do their due diligence to allocate money, not to these businesses, because if you look on the list of businesses, there are no dollar amounts attached. So that's not what we're doing tonight. So, I think that it's something good that we do, and I definitely, let me say, I support it, because it also puts these businesses in a position that if they get support from the city, howbeit, a small amount, that they can at least put out applications as they move forward to get other monies from the state or the federal government for the business that's been impacted by COVID. So I understand. I know I'm going to say, I wasn't going to say I understand, but I don't understand, because it's really not, we're not allocating money to businesses tonight. We're allocating money to the Community Loan Fund, which we have done in the past, to, go through their process of allocating money to small businesses that qualify. And I think that's important to say.
Mr. Palomini.
Wait a second. So Ms. Patrick is next, then you can go ahead, Ms. Perazzo. I think Ms. Patrick had some. Oh, nope. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Perazzo.
I'm all set.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
And I believe that it is not just limited to this list of businesses. Any business can apply to the Community Loan Fund. This was just a list of business owners that they surveyed. It means some of these people won't get money. Other businesses not on this list will apply and be considered. This is just a list that they gathered information off of. I don't know how many times I can say it.
And part of that
It's not so fun. It's not a laughing matter, everybody. And this is not as black and white as folks are saying. Where is the advertising of this? If these applications don't start until October 2020, then I want to see an ad, a publication, something in the Gazette that is going to open this up to all our small businesses in the city of Schenectady, not to just this small group. And I really don't like when somebody smirks and smiles, and I'm just thinking that we do not understand what we're talking about. And that's unacceptable. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
I'm asking the council to approve this. If you don't approve it, none of these businesses are going to get any money. That survey was done not only for this program, but to better identify the problems in situations that have been created by COVID within the community so that we can formulate some of the assistance programs, whether they're coming from the city or other guidance that we might be able to provide for these small businesses.
I think Mr. Motivaran was trying to say something.
Yeah, a couple of things to talk about that. I mean, we talked about the survey and the small business who didn't respond. Have we made an attempt to reach out to them via email, phone call to follow up and to see where they are in terms of completing the survey and return questionnaires?
I don't know what the staff's intent is to do additional follow-up on this. You know, you do a survey, you have to end it at some point so you can compile the information.
No, I understand, but courtesy follow-up would be helpful in terms of the small business. Some could be off the grid and just waiting for a lifeline, and this is a lifeline that
some of this, my suggestion would be the follow-up would be now to educate people on the availability of whether it's this program or other things that are out there. And I'm not, you know, Mr. Kosher will provide you with whatever advertising was done. I'm not sure that is necessarily the best way to reach out to some of these. It's with Ron Gardner, it's with the Chamber of Commerce, it's with the DSIC to get that message out within the community that we're trying to structure this level of assistance and build enough flexibility in so that it makes a difference to businesses that are going through very difficult times.
If I may also,
I just want to follow up.
Go ahead, Mr. Motivaran.
Last month, we reallocated $57,000 or so to CARES Inc. What is that? Isn't overall that they are going to manage the CARES funding? That reallocation?
So
the question is either to Mr. Mayor or
you said you reallocated something. I couldn't hear that, John.
We reallocate last month. We reallocate $57,000 to CARES Inc. Well, we were of the understanding, if I'm mistaken, that they are going to manage the CARES Act funding.
They are in Derek or Avi can maybe direct the specifics where they're going to manage some of this additional money that is coming in, not the specific amount that you're dealing with tonight.
Okay. And just to echo, as Mr. Kosher says, I mean, this is not a laughing matter. It's serious business. And I don't think anyone on the council is against small business. We all are fully discussing this to support our small business and to help them through the COVID-19. So we're passionate about advocating for them and to make sure they have access to any funding that is available. And that is my concern, is that we have a list there and an agency might take the list, might not take the list. And that is my concern.
All right. Well, I think, why don't we just do a poll of the council, see where you are in supporting or not supporting, and see if there's support from that to move it out of committee. I'm just going by who I see first. Ms. Patrick?
I definitely support this. all the way and think that we should do it so that we can get on with the business of trying to get the applications in from our small businesses and advertising to the small businesses that the funding is available.
Okay, Ms. Porterfield.
Thank you. Yes, I too am in full support of this. And I just want to just reiterate again that we have not chosen, no one's chosen these businesses. Every small business that meets the criteria in the documents that we submitted can apply for this. So it's not this list. We're not going to provide the loan fund with this list. It's up to individual businesses to apply on their own, not the other way around. So I am full support of this.
Mr. Kosher, you're next.
Nope, no support as I listed earlier. And my other question is, why can't we do this in-house? Mr. Gardner, it seems like some of this stuff might be right up his department there. Say 40,000, put it in-house and work it that way. But I can't support this as is.
Mr. Mutavaran.
My many concern, I've stated before. I mean, I'm going to go back on one of them is the concern on the council with prior discussion, prior knowledge of allocation of CDBG funding and the CARES Act funding. We are being told that we're going to be involved. Here comes, we're not being involved. We're asked to review and approve allocation, and there's nothing else that's being given to us in terms of participation. We discussed this at length 2 months ago, last month, and we continue to discuss it. Mr. Solan is aware of it. He acknowledged that the participation at council of this round was again, no access. When are we going to start engaging the council and let us help with these allocations to help our small business? I mean, I can't support these things. I mean, we should look at cost savings. Look at, we're going to give 40,000, 10 business. We can add more than 20, almost 20 more small business to that 40,000. Why can't we, as Mr. Kosher said, maybe do it in-house? Why can't we do that?
Okay, Ms. Perazzo.
I, once again, think that personal feelings are getting in the way of us doing proper business as a council. We have a trusted and true partner in the Community Loan Fund. It's what they do. They support business. They vet business. They help business. It's what they do. So why would we do it in-house when we don't have that expertise? They have training programs that we couldn't possibly create in-house. This is not giving them $40,000. This is giving them 5% of administrative costs, and then they are going to educate the small businesses in our city of Schenectady that are suffering right now. And then they're going to vet them. They're going to have them apply for what they need, and then they're going to help them when businesses are barely hanging on. They've been 6 months without normal business. I don't understand. The council shouldn't have control over this. We should hand it over to people who specialize in this field and let them help small businesses throughout the city of Schenectady, not only through giving them possibly life-saving for their business loans, but also education. So I am just flabbergasted by this conversation, and I would be in full support of it. I can't believe right now that we're not going to pass something to help our small businesses in the city of Schenectady. I can't believe it.
Well, I will support it as well for most of everything that's already been said. I won't rehash it, but it appears we do not have enough to get it out of committee unless Mr. Mutavaran is willing to make that motion. But before we do that, I'll ask if there's any last comments or questions. Go ahead, Ms. Patrick.
I just want to say that it's not just about the training. That, again, I agree with Ms. Perazzo. The Community Loan Fund has the means of actually then administering the loan program, and to ask our affirmative action office to try to take on administering these grants, I think would be a whole new operation that would have to be learned when indeed we have the Community Loan Fund already set up to do this kind of business. So that's just my final comment.
All right, and I know that Ms. Zaluski-Wazunis was in favor, but she's not here to state for herself, so it really doesn't matter. Mr. Mudavaren, would you be willing to move this or not? If not, then we will table it.
As stated before.
Okay, then we will table it and bring this back in 2 weeks. The next item on the agenda is a call for a public hearing.
Good evening, everyone. Again, it's that time of year for the budget for 2021. Our department, our staff, Liz, Derek, myself, we've been working tirelessly putting together numbers, looking to go forward for a public hearing. We're asking you today to pass it for the September 14th council meeting so that we could schedule the public hearing on October 13th, which is a Tuesday, because October 12th, for Monday, is Columbus Day. So again, we're asking for the call for a public hearing for the 2021 budget.
Okay. Are there any questions? All right, Mr. Mudavaren, would you move this? I'll second. All those in favor? Aye. So the public hearing will be on October 13th.
Correct.
All right. Next is the support letter to the state and federal elected officials for funding the school district with Mr. Mudavaren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have seen over the last couple of days the impact and what's happening in our school district with massive layoffs throughout the school district, affecting our students, teachers, and everybody is affected by this. And I think it's wise that we reach out via resolution to our federal and state officials to demand that they fund our school. Our school really needs help at this point in time. And I'm asking for a resolution that we can send out to them to show our support and to support Schenectady School District in this troubling time.
Are there any questions or comments? All right, if you could just send that copy of that resolution around before we vote on Monday so everybody can see. Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion.
I should have that resolution by no later than Thursday.
Thank you.
Move it.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call to order public safety. We have 2 items. First one is a follow-up that I was asked by Ms. Porterfield and Mr. Kosher to keep this item so that the council can be updated on the police reform and the task force progress. Ms. Porterfield, Mr. Kosher.
Yes. So, as I said, I would just like for us to just keep track of what's going on. I know that letters went out to all of us, actually, the city council, as well as to groups that are going to be involved in the process. And so I spoke with Alex today, and I was hoping that either Alex or the chief would be on the line today to give us the update where the progress is, in terms of people being the committees forming and when this actual process would get underway. Or if the mayor could speak to that.
Well, we've done a briefing for each city council member. As you've articulated, we've sent letters out to groups. They're identifying 2 members to come in, so we have a collective community forum. I don't have the timeline right in front of me of when those meetings will be scheduled, but we're getting those results in by the end of this week or the first part of next week, and then we'll structure the actual meetings. We've got the Finn Institute as the research partner, trying to put that together in terms of some public presentations of what they do, some of the things with the police department, currently the policies that are in place, making those available, getting people the opportunity to read those, update themselves on what proper protocol is now. And so I'm not sure what additional information you want. We're still in the formative stage, bringing all this together.
Given the fact that we have to have this all completed by April 1st, do you know when we will, you said it's very formative, do you know when we'll actually start the work is one question. And secondly, I've had feedback from folks who were part of, I guess, what you're calling the steering committee. And part of the concern is that it was meeting during the day, and there are people who are still working, whether it's virtually or actually going to the office, and therefore we're unable to make the meeting. So the concern is that to invite people to the table, but if it's dinner is served at the time they can't come, then it doesn't make sense. So I want to make sure that that's taken into consideration as well.
So noted.
Do you have a time frame when this will get started, Mayor?
I told you I don't have the dates in front of me. We are getting those names in by either the end of this week or the beginning of next week, and then we'll start those meetings right after that and have a moderator in place to do that.
Yep, Mr. Motivaren? Mr. Motivaren? Mr. Motivaren?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and again, just piggyback on the mayor, he's exactly right with, the two representatives from the community groups and the stakeholders. Those names are due this Friday, September 18th, to Carissa's office. Actually, they have an email here, Schenectady PD Collaborative at SchenectadyPD.com. But those neighbor associations and other groups have all received this letter, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for sending those out and including all those agencies. But again, the deadline for that is this Friday. So please, those folks that are listening, make sure you follow up and get those names in. Thank you.
And just one other thing, there's something, and I will send it to all the council members because as you saw the letter, we are listed as well on the steering committee. So therefore, whether collectively or individually, there is work that we should be doing as well. I have some information because I've been doing some research. So I will share that with the rest of the council in terms of, because police reform is not just happening in the city of Schenectady or the state of New York, it's happening all over. So I do have some information that I will share with you about what other organizations, cities of similar size and capacity are doing, and I will share that with the city council for us to take into consideration as we move forward with whatever recommendations we may have. Thank you, Mr. Motivaren.
Thank you. And just to add to Ms. Porterfield, I mean, I know that there was a meeting last month, a steering committee meeting, and the city council is part of the steering committee meeting, and we weren't invited. So I would like this to be corrected and make sure that we are invited to the steering committee meeting ahead of time, so that we are not being informed after the fact of these meetings. Any other comments with regards to that?
Well, we've added to the steering committee. I didn't feel at that point I needed any assistance from the council. So we've added you. The briefing on those timelines, when the meeting was scheduled, any of the council members that we met with, we informed them of when that meeting was going to be. Mr. Kosher, I think, was one of those, and then who said he didn't know about it and was questioning not being invited. It was again still preliminary organizational meetings and not again anything that's intended to slight the members of the council, but to be cognizant of the value of your time and hopefully get you focused on more productive things.
Mr. Mayor, I think the bottom line is that the council would like to be involved. So regardless of the timing, if all of us can make it, some of us will make it and make the time for it. So please have someone invite us. Any other comments in regards to police reform task force? Thank you. Next item, we have the discussion regarding residential property nuisance and police call. These two items have to do with the residential property nuisances. I think a year or two ago, we passed a resolution and kind of empower the police department to go there and give tickets for property nuisance. And we had some issues with the ticketing process. And I think Mr. Koja had talked about that with regards to what's happening in the community right now. And we want to put this on the agenda to see where we are in terms of revising the ticket process so that the police department can go there and continue to issue tickets and not being thrown out by our court system. And the other, all the time, or unwarranted police calls for residents, and they feel that they should be calling 911. Use the number when it's really emergency. I think a year or two we passed a resolution where we impose a fee to these calls. So we'd like to know what's the position of the ticketing process, revising the ticket. Are we issuing an invoice for the unwarranted calls to these residents? Mr. Koja, you want to add something to that before we open up for questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mulverin. And it's very, very important, because again, we continue to get calls to the same residents, numerous calls. And unfortunately, I looked at the Albany Times Union editorial, and they're talking about the incident that happened in the city of Albany with the officers there. And the editorial reads that there was both an excessive violent reaction by the police officers and a systematic breakdown that goes up the ranks beyond the department. The property was a known problem. Some officers, to their credit, were looking for creative ways to shut it down as a nuisance with the help of the city codes department and the Albany County District Attorney's Office, but they seemed to get little support. And that's the support that I think that Mr. Multivar and I are talking about here, Mr. Mayor. And I thought the chief was going to join us today because our officers are continually going to the same properties with the same noise incidents and understanding what's going on. And we just need to have them or create a data sheet, if we can, with the properties and the number of calls that have been to each property. And again, there's a point system that we have, and it's under our code under 183-1, and it's in section B, where it talks about the different points for each call. And I think this is something that we really have to try to enforce and give our officers this support that they need in the streets, because otherwise they're continuing to go to the same addresses. And I can tell you for a fact, I know several addresses, and I know Mr. Multivaran does as well, where this is happening. The officers are continually called to the household, and there is absolutely nothing they can do. But with the 183-1, and then the other one is 183-15. It really gives the mayor some great authority here to deal with residential property nuisances. And Mr. Mayor, and like I said to the chief, I really would like to see a list of calls that have gone out, and it shouldn't be very hard to do. We have a couple of data analysts there that work in the Schenectady PD, just so we have something to take a look at and some control, and again, some support to give our officers when they go out.
Well, Mr. Kozu, you indicated you have a list of properties. Mr. Mudaviran has that. So if you get me those addresses tomorrow, I'll give you a detailed report back on what we have done or what we are doing with those locations. And then if you tell me what criteria you want on a report, we can easily generate that. But what we're talking about now is more generic comments, and let's get it down to specifics so that we can follow up and address the underlying issues.
Mr. Koja, you have an email in for some information with regards to those calls?
Yeah, I did. I'll send it again to just yourself, Mr. Mayor, or to Chief Clifford, or who do you want it mailed to?
You send it to me.
I will send it to you directly, and then
Mr. Multivar has work for the council.
Thank you, sir. I do appreciate that. And again, Mr. Mayor, we're just trying to offer some protection to our officers here. Again, when they go out continuously to an address and they pull up.
You send me those addresses that you're articulating that are the problem.
Sir.
I will get you the report back.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr.
Yeah,
Mutavera.
and same here with me. I will resend those emails to you, Mr.
Yep.
Mayor. Ms. Perazzo?
Yes, thank you. That's actually legislation that I crafted. And I worked with Mr. Falatico, and we fashioned it after the bodegas in the convenience stores. Same idea. It works on a point system, and it was for several different reasons, right? It was one, of course, so the police department could have some teeth. Two, the slick landlord group loves it because it helps support when there are problem tenants. Three, we have a lot of absentee landlords that may not even be aware of what is going on at their property because, the neighbor's calling the police or whatever, and they don't live in town, which isn't a good situation, but we know it happens. And the reports are very easy to get, and they can be pulled and reviewed, and it's all in place. It's done, and we were following up on it on a monthly basis and analyzing it, and then staffing changes and this and that. So I'm happy that it's been pulled from the code again, and Mr. Mutaveran and Mr. Kosher are reviving the focus on it because I think it's a good piece of legislation and it's helpful all the way around.
Yeah, I think that is the outcome here we're trying to get. So bring it back to the table for discussion so that we can able to start look at it on a broader scale and to reinforce it. It needs to do. This is something that we want to support our police department. Mr. Kosher?
Yeah, Ms. Perazzo, if I may ask Ms. Perazzo a question. Lisa, who were giving you the reports? Was it PD or was it coming from law or, I'm very interested in.
Traffic, PD, the
Okay,
dispatch, yep.
great, so.
And it might be different now that it's county dispatch, but it can still be done. It can still be done.
Great, and I think it's something that we want to do. I mean, again, just to support our men and women that are out in the field, so they have again some criteria out there. And again, Ms. Perez, I recall now that was your move, and again, I think it was great. It's done a good job with the bodegas, but now we got to move into this residential situations that is just becoming very just annoying to a lot of our neighbors. So thank you again.
And just to add to that, not only residential, I mean, we have bodegas who are getting a lot of calls from, police calls to their location. And we need to know what are we going to do in terms of the point system and when does it apply to them? Because we had many calls from residents and I forward these calls and complaints to the mayor. So we'll follow up and make sure that this is in the pipeline and we'll continue to drive it. Any other business before public safety?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Palameni isn't on public safety, so I don't know if the record.
I'm sorry, I misread
Yeah.
the, I looked at the thing wrong. Thank you, Ms. Perazzo.
Yes. So may I have a motion?
It's Ms. Porterfield.
I know. Let me unmute. Motion to adjourn.
Alrighty.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Mutaveran.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
All right, thank you. I will call to order the Committee on Administrative Efficiency. We have a couple of items here on our agenda. First is privilege of the floor online submittal form. Mr. Multivaran and Sam Michael, either or, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We just want to highlight going back with the many concerns email that we have received from the public in terms of their participation and how can we make it easy for them to submit information to the council. So with the help of Ms. Michael and the IT department, we were able to generate a link to a form here that the resident can complete online and submit. And this form, after completion, will go directly to Ms. Michael and we can able to generate this information in a timely fashion and able to gather all this information together at once. Ms. Michael, you want to update us on it, please?
cityofschenectady.com. It's on under the government tab. You'll see under City Council. You can get the form that way. Over to the that and get into the forms. The form will actually be coming to me and also Mr. Mutavaran as council president. And you have under privilege of the floor, you can select for either the public hearing, legislative business, or city business, and would be able to include all the information submitted to the minutes at the next meeting.
Mr. Mutavaran?
Go ahead,
Yes, Ms. Patrick, go ahead.
Would there be, oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
It's
Kocher.
okay. You got it. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. With the form, will there be sort of definitions, for example, that part that you just did, the drawdown menu, so that, you know, sometimes you might see like a little I for info next to where it says public hearing, for example, or legislative business, just so folks understand what they're in, where would be the appropriate place for them to be, you know, submitting this, under which category. So just a few directions. And I also feel like, I don't know if folks will have, I mean, just explaining about creating an account and what that might mean for folks, because it looks like you have to create an account in order to submit the form, and some people might have questions about that as well. So I'm just, you know, just a couple of concerns. But otherwise, I think it's good to add this form on file.
Yeah, if I can address that, or Sam, I'll address that. And, you know, if you create an account, you have to do that in any fashion to submit any form on the city website, whether it's with potholes, code enforcement, or whatever. It's a very simple process. Your name and an email address. So that is very, very simple, but that's going to be your continued login forever when you want to log into the city website. And I think that really is very good. And as far as, you know, working more than the privilege of the floors and selecting one, I think it's pretty clear what the public hearing is, what the legislative business is, and city business. And I think we've done it in the past as well, where if somebody signed up, I'm talking about in the chambers, and they signed up, let's say, for a public hearing, and they start talking about city business, well, the council president has informed that individual that you're on the wrong sheet, and we will put you on the other section. And I think that's probably, Sam, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's probably what you would end up doing as well at your end. But I think the form is excellent. What we did is we piggybacked what Schenectady County is doing. So the county as well has had this. Because again, we've been getting so many emails, I'm sure all of us, as far as folks saying they didn't have easy access to privilege of the floor or submitting their comments. This clearly makes this process a lot easier for everybody. And being quite honest, I hope it's only going to last for 3 more weeks because we're coming up on the next discussion for reopening the chamber. So I'll entertain any other questions on this piece here.
Yes, Mr. Kocher?
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I think that Ms. Patrick's idea of additional information is excellent, because I think right now we're getting more people, believe it or not, that may want to submit comments that normally don't. And so I don't. So having more explanation and breaking it down for people, I don't think it's a bad thing. Actually, I think it's a good thing for us to educate people to what our process is. So I like that idea. I would also like to know with this forum, because I know we've gotten a lot of questions, feedback, comments. When we read the form, will we read the person's name specifically? Even if we have 20 people that write in about one thing, will we say John Smith, Mary Jones, etc.? Will we list people individually? Because that was one of the concerns that people have given us feedback on, in terms of us just saying we had 13 about this thing, or people want to hear what their names are similar when they come to the rail. They say say, my name is Marion Porterfield, I reside in the city. So will we be doing that when we get these forms? Will we take the time and effort to know who actually took the time and effort to submit a privilege of the form, privilege of the floor request?
Very good. Ms. Michael or Mr. Motivaren?
Mr. Coach,
Yes, sir.
yeah, just to add to that, Ms. Porterfield, and this is one of the reasons why we put the name, because we received some of the emails and it was just the email address and there's no name associated with some of the emails. So it's one of the reasons why we, Ms. Michael had to group some of the emails in. With this form, it will help us and we can able to do that, to announce the names them going forward and not grouping them. And we encourage people to submit their, using the form online to submit comments and, complete it as much as they can.
I do have one other follow-up question. Does this form require you to have a PDF writer in order to use it? Or is it just once you pull it up from the city website, regardless if you don't have that particular program on your computer, will you be able to complete it? Does it only require pulling up the form?
It only requires pulling up the form.
Okay.
Yeah, just clicking on the link. It's really not pulling up the form. You're just clicking on that link, Ms. Porterfield, and it'll automatically open. Any keyboard, whatever program you're using. So again, you're clicking, as Ms. Michael's saying, it goes boom right there, directly to the form, and you can type in your comments first name. But again, it will not go through unless the three items on top are completely filled out. All right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question that's kind of related to this, but not exactly about this form. It's about the forms that we use, because here we are, we're asking individuals to give us a lot of information about what they want to talk about. But we've gotten to the point now where the forms that we submit simply have our name, what it's going to be about, and no explanation. When Ms. Perazo, I sent this out in the text message. When Ms. Perazo was president, she created where we had to submit our legislative requests and complete information, because right now we're at the point where people only see what we submit to them. They only see, they don't get to, there's no interaction. So I think now's the time to give more information than less. And we should be, on our legislative request forms, have a little bit more information for the public. People can't speak to, at the meetings. I think we need to really start putting a little bit more information. As much as we're asking the public to do that, I think that we as legislators should give a little bit more background on when we put in legislative requests. It will be very helpful to the people who are trying to follow the process as we are on this virtual stage. And hopefully it'll end soon, but even if it doesn't, or even when it does, I think we should still be providing more information on our legislative requests, as opposed to just discussing it once we begin our council meetings. Thank you.
That is noted, and I will encourage my colleagues to do that. It's not mandatory, but if you have the time, please do it.
Very good. All right, so again, we just want to showcase this to our council members and, of course, the public as well. Again, hoping that we only need this for the next 2 meetings. Again, we'll go to the full session after that. Any other discussion on this? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to number 2 there, which is discussion. The city council reopening for in-person meetings, the protective equipment for room 110 in the council chambers. For those who might know, the Schenectady County Legislature are now meeting in full in their chambers for the first time this evening. They've had plexiglass petitions installed around each of their chairs in the chambers itself. And again, as we've talked with our budget coming up, which is always controversial to some point, I would just like to see what the time frame, if any, to open up our council chambers for our comments to be in person. So I don't know, can I address this to Mr. Mayor? Would you be able to comment on this, or Chris Wallen? One of the two?
The decision to hold the meetings is the council. It's not mine.
Yes, but we need the protective equipment there, Mr. Mayor. We need a plexiglass.
say you're going to hold the meetings, we'll make the appropriate modifications or supply it. You have to remember, I was the first mayor to close City Hall. We led in that area. Ray Senecal, the fire chief, still acts as the incident commander. We review these things internally across the city, and it's solely the council's decision whether or not to have the meetings. If you have them the meeting in the building, we'll set it up and structure it in a manner that will try and optimize people's safety.
Well, not try to optimize it, has to optimize our safety. And we probably like rather than just walking in and saying, oh, this is great.
So,
well, disrespect, but I'm not drawing on your knowledge and outlining some of these precautions that we put in place.
Yeah.
But again, this COVID virus is insidious in some things, and you cannot guarantee 100% sanitization when you have people moving in and out of a building or facility. But we structure it again the way to can provide that optimal relief for potential contamination.
Mr. Motivaran?
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, in terms of these items that is needed for us to reopen back and meet in person, in terms of health screening, in terms of the enforcement, in terms of people sanitizing the room for the participants, and the equipment that is needed. In terms of funding, Mr. Mayor, do you have, or do we have to find a budget line to reallocate funding to make the necessary adjustment so that we can meet in person?
But City Hall is open now. We're doing appointments. I've basically been here every day. We have those protocols in place. We have cleaning in place. We do things at the fire stations, at the police stations. So you seem to be out of touch with the actual reality of what we have in place. We don't, there's limited access to City Hall. We do both security screening and health screening for people coming in, and largely are working off appointments, so that the restriction, we're providing the service, but there's a level of restriction, and yes, there is some inconvenience in it.
Well, again, our meetings are 5:30.
Let me address that. Mr. Mayor, I'm not out of touch on reality. I've been to the hall almost every week, and I see that what's happening there. In terms of us meeting in the evening, that's what I'm asking about, to provide staffing on an overtime basis, in terms of police officer, in terms of the cleaning crew.
It's going to drive up the cost of doing business.
And that's what I'm asking. Is the funding available for that?
If the city council chooses to meet, I will make it work within the budget that's in place.
Perfect. And that's what I'm asking about. I'm not asking anything about being out of touch with reality. Thank you.
All right. Well, again, Mr. Mayor, to follow up, can we get some sort of a plan or whatever the safety committee can offer us? Is how can this council meet upstairs? I'm assuming one of the easiest things are just to locate the 6 desks to kind of form them in a semicircle, kind of what Albany does. But again, the microphone, how many people are going to be in the chamber? What's going to be our maximum seating arrangements? I guess you have that for court now, and but there's so many different things here, Mr. Mayor. If folks are going to want to enter the building, we got 20 people that want to speak at the public hearing, but we can only seat 11. How are we going to determine that? With the police officer downstairs, with another assistant down there doing the temperature?
Some of those determinations are not, it's up to the council what rules you're going to put in place.
So you're telling me you want us to create our own safety plan, how people are going to enter City Hall for our 5:30 open meetings? Is that what you're telling me?
No.
Okay.
You're looking for a point of controversy here in this whole agenda tonight. You tell me when you want to open, and we'll put a plan in place and have it there, but you may not be able to accommodate people in the manner that we have done it in the past. Again, you might be correct. If there are 20 people that show up and we're only able to configure for 11, it's still going to be up to the council to determine the rules of how those people are going to come in, be rotated through, or given other opportunities to participate.
All right, so you want us, the council, to come up with a plan to present to you in order to, that we can have our first public meeting in
I said,
October.
you give me a date when you're doing it, and you want to do it, and we'll put it in place. But there may be some restrictions that will not allow the chamber to handle people that have been there before.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it's
so,
up to the council how you sort through that.
okay, so our first one will be October 13th, and then whatever, it looks like the 27th would be, no, 26th would be the next one after that. So those are 2 days. So I guess, Mr. Motivaran, do we want to do an ad hoc committee or a group? Do we want to talk about it later on? How do we want to do this? Because certainly this is something that I think we're going to have to move forward on and present it to the mayor so that they can move forward and get this chambers open in time for our October 13th meeting.
So a question to Mr. Mayor, can we, the council, I know we can set up a few members, but can there be a few members from your office to work with us to come up with a game plan and a timeline so that we can present to you?
Will you tell me the date, and I'll have the staff do the evaluation to put in place what would be the appropriate safety precautions?
Yeah. So what I'll do, I'll set up some time that we can able to meet and to move forward and work on getting these things in place. So I'll reach out to your office and we can work on that.
Okay, very good. Any other comments from any of the colleagues? What's your feelings on this? And I think the importance of trying to get back into the chambers there, I think is very important. But again, we need those safety precautions in place. Anybody else want to chime in? Nope. All right, so hearing none, so Mr. Motivaran, you're gonna work that out with the mayor and his staff, and we'll put this back on for 2 weeks, Ms. Maiku, so we can follow up and give a report back to our constituents. Anything else to come before our committee here? Hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There you go, Mr. Palmetti, and I'll second. All in favor, say aye, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Who's going to take this particular day, or who's going to take this hour?
Marion, you're chair of government operations. You're also muted.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry, I was having difficulty, but thank you for that. Call to order government operations. We have 4 items on the agenda. First item is emergency COVID foreclosure relief. Mr. Motivaran and Mr. Kosher.
Yes, thank you, Porterfield. So what Mr. Kosher and myself are asking here is for the council to consider a COVID relief in terms of the foreclosure. Our colleagues from the county a few months ago had passed something similar to this in terms of asking to put a hold on foreclosure so that we can able to address the many problems that the homeowners, landlords are facing in Schenectady and throughout the country. The county is putting a hold until 2021. And we are before the council for discussion and to see where we are in terms of putting a hold on foreclosure so that these people can benefit and get back on their feet and able to repay and move on.
Yes, Ms. Ross, I just want to get a clarification first. Mr. Mudabaran, you said we're before the county having discussion. Could you expand a little bit more on that?
We're before the council to discuss what we can do in terms of helping.
Oh, okay.
The county has a similar package,
right,
in terms of putting a hold on foreclosure.
Right. So let me start by saying that I think the only thing we can do is discuss this because we have absolutely no backup material to take a look at to even see what we should be considering. And I think there's that. In addition to that, there's also, at least on the state level, perhaps on the federal level, where this kind of legislation is moving forward. So we should be taking backup material to say, this is what we're considering, this is what we want to do, here's the criteria that make people eligible. So I would say we would need to start there before we can even begin to consider any type of relief in terms of, we need to look at something. So Ms. Perazo, you had a question or a statement?
Yeah, I guess I'm confused by this because, mortgage foreclosure is one thing with a bank, right? Which can happen quite quickly. But our foreclosures are 3 years of people not paying their taxes. So I don't know how, that's how you end up on the foreclosure list. You haven't paid your taxes for 3 years. It's not like you missed 3 months and we foreclose on you. So I'm not sure us slowing this process is going to be helpful to somebody who hasn't paid their taxes in 3 years. Different situation. So just putting that out there for thought as we have our discussions going forward. We're not a bank where we can foreclose in 90 days or whatever.
Ms. Porterfield?
Ms. Patrick, go ahead.
And I agree that we need more background information. For example, like what is the scope of this? I didn't even know what Ms. Peraza about the 3. But how many people would be affected by this would also be part of the background documentation that I'd like to see.
Okay. Mr. Mudabaran, Mr. Kocher, do you want to speak to any of that?
Go ahead, Mr. Kocher.
No, I think we would pick up that information. We'll get all that information for you. So we just hold this for 2 weeks, and we'll definitely get this back on once we get all the information gathered.
Yes, and Mr. Kocher, I think we should also, really outline what the intent is, what we're trying to achieve here, especially given the fact, as Ms. Peraza pointed out, it does take 3 years before we even begin to foreclose on people. So,
and I believe the federal government has come out with the foreclosure as well.
Yes.
So again, we want to take a look at that, what that language has, and how that would affect the city of Schenectady folks.
Right. So while we're talking about, landlords and foreclosure, are we also going to be looking at tenants and rent? Is the scope going to be that wide, or are we just keeping this to homeowners?
Well, I think the eviction is on hold until the end of the year, federal guidelines. So I think there's no eviction going on at this point in time.
Exactly, but they will eventually, when it comes time again, they will have people need to be evicted. So this is talking about relief. So I'm asking, are you also going to be looking at rent relief once they get to that point? That's a question.
Well, obviously, yes, we can look at it, but where is the funding coming from? Can we make some reallocation from the CDBG and help with that? Absolutely.
I think the same question comes up here. Where would this funding come from for foreclosure relief? So we can look forward to getting the additional information and then reviewing it and having further discussion in a couple of weeks.
I don't think we need funding to put a hold on foreclosure relief. It's just a matter of us, the city, not foreclosing within a period of time.
I see. Well, again, I think we need more background information.
Yeah, absolutely. You're correct on that. We can look at that on a broader scale in terms of the CDBG and maybe give some relief to the tenants so that they can help them to pay their back rent.
I'm not suggesting okay. So anyway, in 2 weeks, if we could have some more information on what the intent is, what you're trying to achieve, and how it would look. That would be great, Mr. Mudabaran and Mr. Kocher. So would you like this back on in 2 weeks? Is that what we're going to do?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Our second agenda item is hearing on housing. Derek? And I always feel like I say.
Fine. So to receive funding through the U.S. Department of Urban Development, it's required to develop houses impediments to fair housing. A 30-day public comment period was open for this August 17th and will close September 17th. Analysis to discrimination and provide fair housing for people within the city of Schenectady. So we would like the city council to get a public for the meeting on September 14th at 5:30 p.m.
Okay, so you were breaking up a little bit. Did you say the public hearing for September 14th?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
Normally, we would have excuse me, Ms. Porterfield.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, we would have a between so that people would be aware of the public hearing. It's not our usual scheduling to have a public hearing on the next council night. So I would ask if we shouldn't move this out to September 28th so that the public can be aware of the public hearing. Usually wait another cycle to go. We can wait that cycle, but timing wise, it seems like this has to.
Yes, because I was looking at the time frame. I was kind of wondering why we hadn't heard about this before, since the public comment period opened in August. And Ms. Peraza is correct. We usually give a couple of weeks to that. So when do you absolutely have to have this, Derek? I see, but the public comment period closes on September 17th. So,
right. I don't know exactly when this will be approved of. After discussions with Dan Gray, it seemed that we needed to have it on September 14th.
And I have to tell you that I don't know that we can do that, Mr. Mudavaran. Is that something we can do to have a public hearing so quickly without notifying the public? Because they're really.
Ms. Porterfield.
That's all.
Mr. Mudavaran, please.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question. Mr. Colden, guidance.
Hold the hearing in the next cycle. It's not going to happen that quick.
Okay, so the mayor, go ahead, Mr. Colden, I'm sorry.
I agree, unless there's, this is a question I don't have an answer to, and this is something that Derek can provide. Derek, is there a drop dead date when we have to submit the AI to HUD? Is there a deadline on this?
I'm not sure of that. I would have to speak with Dan about that to get an answer for you.
Right, and if there's no deadline here, yes, what we would typically do is we'd have a resolution calling for a public hearing, put people on notice of the public hearing, and then be the next cycle.
Okay, well, that's really what we need to do, and so I'm not sure how the dates were created. So we would have to go by the normal process. And how can we find out, Mr. How can we find out, Derek, about the information? When can you get that to us? Because this does not give us enough time, as was laid out.
I discussed and back to this.
So,
Madam Chair, I would
yes,
ask at this point that you call for the public hearing and start the process.
Okay.
I would motion to call for public hearing on September 20th.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So we are calling for a motion. That was a motion to call for a public hearing on September 28th. Our next agenda item is number 3, City Clerk's Office Reorganization. Mr. Mudavaran and Ms. Maiku.
Ms. Michael.
Okay, so there has been a position that's been left vacant in my office, and I'm just trying to reorganize the office to have the staffing that we need. It's essential services, deputy city clerk that's needed here in case, so that I may be able to go on vacation or take time off if necessary. I would like to move my deputy registrar into the deputy city clerk position and one of our clerical aides into the deputy registrar position. The staff here, they've been here already almost a year. They know what's going on and have been picking up quite quickly and easily. The staff change will be saving the office money. These are key and critical positions that we can't function without. We're already at bare bone minimum staffing. And positions are for services to continue with delay or significant impact to the essential services that we do provide.
Thank you, Ms. Maiku. Mr. Mudavaren, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, I'll just add to Michael, based on information that was provided to us in terms of these two realignments. Her office was able to generate savings of roughly close to $26,549 in terms of reallocating these two positions, not selling one of them at this point in time. That will generate $4,396, and then there were a few employers who paid $11,800 for a total saving of $26,000. So I think it's wise that we do these two reallocations. These are essential positions for the city clerk office, and at the same time for the council. So if Ms. Michael has to go off on vacation or time off, we have somebody here to fill in for her.
Right. So yeah, I agree with that. And additionally, this is not a request for new staff. It's a position that was already filled for reasons beyond her control, Ms. Maiku's control. That person could no longer, fulfill the duties. And so now she's just asking not a new hire, but simply moving someone who's currently in her office into that position. And the clerk's office does not just serve the city council; it serves the residents of the city as well in numerous ways, where people have to have marriage licenses, death certificates, etc. So this is a very essential service to the city, and I really think that she should be able to staff properly. And even if she want to take vacation, but if something came up where she just couldn't be there, because things happen in all of our lives, we have to consider how smoothly that office is able to run. So I really believe that we need to be able to move in this direction. Any other? Yes, Ms. Peraza.
Agree, and not only that, but we have to have staffing support, right? So if God forbid something happens to Ms. Maiku, or she has to care for one of her family members, or whatever the case may be, we have to have somebody in the office that knows the same skill sets. I mean, this is, this is essential, as she said, and I absolutely, and not only that, but we shouldn't have somebody in a position not to be able to take personal time or vacation time. We just shouldn't. It's inhumane.
Agreed.
Ms. Porterfield?
Mr. Palomini?
Yep. I don't have a problem with moving people in positions. I would like to see if we could keep them at their current salaries and then address the issue of their salary once we're in better financial shape. It pretty much got out the window in March or April. The actual expenditures, we would be spending roughly $40,000 in actual costs, plus benefits would be close to around $70,000 in actual costs versus the budget. So if we could move the people to the position and current salaries, I think that would be a more appropriate move given the financial crisis we're in and some of the things that we're facing. I understand the aspects of needing to fill positions, and I don't have any issue with that. It's just unfortunately the salary and the financial shape that we're in. I think it's just unfortunately it's really bad timing to try to talk about cost, additional costs. But just my 2 cents.
right, so
Mr. Phil?
Mr. Kosher.
First of all, who's Matt Cuevas that's on our line here? Is he an employee of ours or should be on this?
Yes, he's with the Rose Garden. That's in the next discussion.
All right. Well, thank you. I didn't I didn't know that. And I could not disagree more with Mr. Palmetti's analysis of this. Take your own situation. If you want to go work as a professor and now they demoted you and go and work at the same salary position, nobody would accept that. And bottom line is these dollar amounts are there. We need to support our city clerk. We need a deputy city clerk. The mayor's office has sent us numerous appointments that have been made recently. And all of a sudden now we have a hiring freeze signed by the mayor just a couple of days ago. Ms. Maiku has submitted this request on at least 2 occasions to have these positions reallocated. And once I believe the mayor has rejected it. The other one, there was no reply to her concerns. This department is our department. These are our employees as city council members. And we need to support Ms. Maiku and the deputy clerk's position at the dollar amount that is so stated for those positions. Case closed.
Porterfield?
Mr. Palmetti.
Yeah, it's not case closed, but I understand this is going to pass. But the fact is, many people in the private sector have to deal with those exact situations every single day. And I think we should just be a little bit cognizant of that fact. And, unfortunately, that's what people have to go through in order to keep their jobs and keep a living during these incredibly horrible times financially. So I understand it's going to pass, but that's my opinion.
Is there any further discussion on this? Questions or comments?
So, Ms. Porterfield and Andrew, I guess, so are we directing then the mayor to fill these positions? Is this a directive from the council? Can the mayor reject this? How does this work?
This is a question for me.
Well, Mr. Kosher, the form was presented to me once, which I declined to sign the personnel form. I talked to Sam about it. We were reviewing the budget on an ongoing basis, and that was last week. Said that we would talk about it again in the future. The council's taking this action, so you can proceed as you see fit.
Thank you.
Ms. Porterfield?
Yes, Mr. Mudavaren.
Just follow up with a few comments. These employees are already receiving benefits.
So let me just, can I just stop us here? Because I think that we've gone probably into territory that really been doing an executive session. Mr. Colden, could you weigh in on that?
I mean, the council can certainly speak about this in open session. It's not necessarily something that has to go into executive session. If you're going to go into executive session, you're going to have to cite a reason why you discuss this in executive session.
Okay, so can we just talk about positions and not names then, please? Mr. Mudavaren, go ahead. Mr. Mudavaren?
Yeah, thank you. No, I just want to just some comment. These employees are already receiving benefits, so there wouldn't be, much of a difference on whatever savings they're generating with these realignments will help the cushion any spike in benefits. So, I'm going to reiterate that we need to look at these positions. They are essential. And we should follow it because, look at the the PC that was emailed to us this afternoon, which I share with the entire council. Appointments have been going on, and there has not been any. So one completed to realignment.
Okay. So at this point, I have to tell you, I'm not really sure if you know we can. This is our mayor. This is our recommendation to you that that these positions be filled at this level. And what would you like to speak to that? I know I did hear you say something, but unfortunately it was a little muffled. So could you repeat what you had said before about your reviewing this?
Again, I declined to sign the personnel form as we hiring freeze in place. I met with Sam. She articulated the need. That was a week ago, and that we would talk about it again. The council's taking this action, and you can move again whatever you choose on it. Mr. Kosher requested some forms. Those are largely at-will employees that are hired on a per diem basis that we've done the SNAP crew, the Bureau of Service. There's some public safety in the police department that allow me to meet contractual obligations at lower costs without providing overtime. Again, I hadn't looked at this in detail, and again, the council, you are correct, it's your employees. You can do that, but there are scenarios that we are looking at, again, talked about this since the spring, where we may have to make substantial cuts that will not be easy to implement. It's going to dramatically affect the city's ability to deliver services. So moving management people around have greater impact in terms of some of the future obligations if we have to make some cuts.
Okay. So what I like to say is that I actually support this. I think that, again, it's not just the city council that this office supports, but the city of Schenectady and its residents, and it's a much needed. So if the council can move forward to have this happen, I would certainly support that. Mr. Mudavera?
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement. I mean, whatever we can do to help to make these realignments, we'll be happy to do that. I mean, if the mayor has to do it, we ask you to please reconsider it and get these two realignments for this office. It's very important. We really appreciate it.
So, Mayor, I guess the request is to your office that you would look at this and reconsider it, and the council is asking that these positions be filled as requested by city clerk.
So is the council going to take formal action, or is this just a narrative for public discussion?
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I think either way. I mean, the easiest way out of this would be very welcoming. I mean, if you can reconsider, I mean, and we can move on, that would be much appreciated. And we don't have to, no council has to take action.
I prefer you take the formal action, and then we'll make those adjustments.
I will make a motion that we move the deputy registrar into the deputy clerk's position and the clerical aide into the deputy registrar's position. And I also want to remind my colleagues that it doesn't matter if it's on the phone. This is a public meeting, so all people are welcome at this meeting until we go into executive session.
Okay, so is there a second? If the other Ms. Patrick is Ms. Patrick.
I will second it. I do have concern that we might be. I mean, I see this in the larger context of other cuts that might be coming down the pike in other staffing areas, and so I am a little concerned about that, but I'll second this motion.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. And the final agenda item under government operations is the managerial vacation accrual leave. Mr. Kozier.
Yes, thanks, Ms. Porterfield. And to clarify, this is not a public session right here. The public session is on OSM and on YouTube. This is strictly for invited members of the council and the mayor staff. So what Mr. Cuevas was doing on this meeting is certainly well and in order. So anyway, the managerial vacation accrual leave, Ms. Michael, you ready to speak on this on your behalf, please?
Yes. So with the managerial vacation accrual leave, right now, management and most staff, but specifically management, we're only able to carry over 2 weeks at a time vacation accrual leave. Currently, I have 124 user leave vacation, and there is no way with us being short-staffed and things that I'm going to be able to use much of that vacation. Last year, I lost over 100 hours vacation time. I'd prefer if we're to carry more 2 weeks. And I believe this would benefit currently that, even because COVID, you're not able to go and do anything, or because short staff, because people are getting sick or whatever the situation may be. It'll just be a benefit. It's not changing the payout. The payout still remains 6 weeks for whatever reason or leave your position. But if you're able to carry over and accrue your time, it would benefit us.
So this is not just your position, this is the entire managerial staff, correct?
Yeah.
And again, you might not be in this position if you had a deputy city clerk in your office that was ready and able to take your lead, as clerk. So both of these things piggyback off of each other, and I think just something to discuss here and try to get feedback from our fellow colleagues, Ms. Porterfield.
So yes, Ms. Ferrazzo?
I would want to know the implications on if we increased it by a week or if we increased it by 2 weeks. I would want to know the budget implications on that.
Okay.
Ms. Porterfield?
Yes, Ms. Patrick.
I'll add to what Ms. Barrazo said, but I'd also like to know, having been in this situation in other workplaces, I'd like to see a chart of all the managerial employees that this would affect. Is everyone in the same boat, or are most people taking their vacation and, the 2 weeks is enough for them to be carrying over? But I absolutely want to see the budget implications in terms of what the liability would be to the city to be carrying more vacation on and what we currently have as policy through our HR office.
So, Mr. Kozier, that request is being made. We would have to bring this back in 2 weeks.
Oh, yes, and I agree with both Ms. Ferrazzo and Ms. Patrick. Take a look at that. Again, we just wanted to start the discussion here to get some feedback. How can we move forward on this? And again, we've all had our experiences at different levels, what we can and cannot carry over with our employers. But again, I think it's just a situation where, several of our department heads are in this same boat. It's not just Ms. Michael. So again, if we can get a list of all that, I guess they would come from Ms. Tiffany White. Would that be correct, Andrew or Mr. Mayor? And can we make sure we can get all that information that's requested?
Yeah, if you could just summarize what you're looking for and send that to Tiffany to have the report generated.
Thank you, sir. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I would like to open the and the item on the agenda for health and recreation is a discussion about about a permit fee for professional photographers in the Rose Garden. Mr. Palomeni.
Thank you. I was approached several members of the garden committee have a concern professional photographers and using the Rose Garden. There are two members on tonight to discuss this issue. There's Matt Cuevas and Sean O'Brien, and I'll ask Mr. Cuevas to fill the council in with the issues and what they're looking for.
Okay, thank you. This is Matt Cuevas. I'm the president of the Rose Garden Restoration Committee. And first, just want to thank the council. I know you've had a very agenda, so I'll keep this short as possible. So again, thank you to Councilman John Palomeni for meeting with us and discussing some of the issues that we've experienced this past year. I think we've all realized that 2020 has been kind of a challenging year, not only for the city, but also for the Rose Garden and our volunteer corps. But what we've seen over the last several months is an extremely high volume of visitors to the Rose Garden. It's been sometimes difficult for, I think, people and our volunteers to even maintain social distancing as it has been. But one of the things that we've seen, and it could be just related to the pandemic, but is a drastic increase of people using the garden by professional photographers. And it used to be that we'd have an occasional photographer on the weekends, but now pretty much almost any day of the week, any night of the week, you'll have as many as 2 or 3 photographers running photos throughout the garden almost any day of the week. And these aren't just, in the past where it might have been, some family photos, an engagement photo. Now we have things like gender release reveals, professional modeling shoots, you name it, it's being photographed in the garden. But what comes along with this is that the photographers, being that the majority of these are professional photographers, they're not just your kind of, family person taking photos. They're bringing in elaborate lighting, setups. They are bringing in props. Occasionally, there's been even modeling shoots where there are several wardrobe changes. And a lot of this tends to be at the expense of the general public, to the point where sometimes they will take over a section of the garden around the fountain, at the lower pond, any of the more, I'm going to say, photographic spots within the garden that they will utilize that they've been able to control before. So part of the discussion is that, we feel is that the photographers need to kind of not necessarily be, limited or reined in, but understand that there should be a certain code of ethic. I mean, most of them are fairly, accommodating to the public, but there have been times where, it seems to be, them taking their photos is at the expense of the public, and that we have even seen where, they've shooed the public away from being within their photo shoot. So the thought came, from the committee is that, just like the wedding permit system or the ceremony permit system is a way to kind of control and maintain some sort of scheduling, so the permit system could be just implemented as a way of, one, that we can see that, the photographers that are using the garden, it would be a nominal fee that they register with the city, so that if they're not registered, we could potentially say, there is a permit fee, it's nominal, we're looking at something that's, a flat fee throughout the year. And basically it's with a code of conduct and etiquette that, this is a public park. It is meant for the public's enjoyment. It's necessarily there for people to make a profit off of. And we're not saying that, it shouldn't be that they cannot use the garden for that. But at the same time, we've seen occasionally there are photographers that will set up anywhere from a half hour to an hour appointment, and they'll be for 4 hours taking several photo shoots throughout the day. So this is really just a suggestion that we're asking from assistance from the city to kind of look at some ways of kind of reining this in. And, like I said, it's really just a discussion, bring it before the floor, and hopefully, we're not like, we're not to limit somebody from making money. If we do institute a permit fee, it would be something very nominal. But I think it's just so that we can ask, somebody that if they're utilizing the garment for photographs, do they have a permit? If they don't have a permit, we probably have like a business card or something like that that would hand to them and say, well, here, there is a permit fee. That you would abide by a rule of conduct and whatnot. You go to the city, get the permit, and all was good to go. So really, it's we're just looking for some assistance from your point of view, or open this up for discussion. Just so that this year might be just an offshoot, but we're just at the success of the garden. As over the years that it's been rehabbed and restored, we are seeing almost, it's great to see the number of visitors that we've seen there, but there's kind of a line between it being used and or used and being possibly abused. So that's kind of why we're kind of asking for your assistance tonight.
Are there any questions or comments?
I do have a question.
Go ahead. Yeah, of course, it's your committee.
and thanks for being here, Mr. Cuevas, and bringing this to our attention. My question is, you enforce this in terms of, you guys are all volunteers. How would you have somebody there all the time to be monitoring this?
But we wouldn't necessarily have somebody there all the time. Many of us on the committee, generally Tuesdays is a day where we have there in the morning, so there are committee members there. The Tuesday evenings, there's usually a volunteer, committee member person there as well. So generally Tuesdays, we're there, anywhere from 9 a.m. to 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and then again in the evenings from, anywhere from 5:30 to, 7:30. I'm there probably several times a week because I kind of make sure that the garbage bins aren't overflowing. I go over and maintain and make sure that the fountains and the water features are all running and that there isn't an excess amount of trash. So even, for instance, yesterday, I went over just to take a quick review of the garden that I thought I'd be there a half an hour, 45 minutes at most. But, once you're there, all of a sudden you start seeing things that you want to do, and you're there 2 or 3 hours. So, and that's the same with a lot of our committee members. So, it's the enforcement issue is really, it's kind of like, not like we're going to have somebody there policing it, 24/7, but that when we are there and there is somebody, particularly, I would say the weekends are the highest volume for professional photographers. So, gradually, I think, we do transition to weekend volunteer hours in the spring and the summer, but it's really something that if we see that if the issue is being abused, that we can then confront it. So it's not as though it's like anything, you don't have a policeman on every street corner throughout the city, but when he sees a crime, he's going to stop somebody. The same thing if we see a photographer that doesn't have a permit, just alert them to the fact that there is a permit system.
This is Sean O'Brien. I'm also a member of the committee and I'd like to thank you, council member and council member Palomini, for putting this on the agenda for tonight. Just underscore what Matt had to say. We're looking for a process where awareness on the part of the professional photographers that this is a public park and the public's going to be using that to walk through, and it's a peaceful setting. And I think that towards that, we're, as part of this permit process, we're looking for, as Matt said, a code of conduct, a code of etiquette. So our committee will be willing to work with the council and the administration, put together a code of conduct, if you will. So the professional photographers, when they're going in there, are aware of the larger surroundings in which they're operating. And that it's a fee, but it's also an awareness that they're in a public park, and the public has the use of that area so they're mindful of that. Their photo shoots are having impact on the public.
Ms. Patrick?
Support Bill.
I agree with that, and I think that one of the things that we would have to do, so because photographers are so accustomed to just going there that we would have to start with some signage that let photographers that are there to do professional shoots know that in order to do that, a permit is required, because we're going to have to educate on some level because people are been accustomed to just going in there and doing it. So I think that we have to have some really nice signage that fit in with the Rose Garden, but to get some signage to let people know that this is being implemented. And since we're almost through the summer, I'm imagining this is going to, well, we're through the summer, this is going to start next year. But even if we do the signage now, because maybe some people will take winter pictures, I don't know. But if we start putting up the signs now so that by the time we're into next summer, wedding season, graduations, etc., people are accustomed to what's going on. And I'm not really sure what all the legislation looks like in terms of the Rose Garden, but if we need to also add something in there as it pertains to professional photographers. And I think, are we only talking about professional photographers, not just, the family coming and taking a picture, though? So if we're talking about that, I think to make that clear so that everyone understands that there is a permit required by and in addition to the permit, I would assume they also have to make an appointment, because two photographers would come, since there's no requirement that you make an appointment, then they could just come and be there at the same time, and it might cause a little conflict between them. So I support that, and I think that we definitely need signage and other education to go out to let people know that this is a change that's happening, because it is a beautiful place, and I do understand why people would want to take pictures there.
Thank you.
Ms. Pack.
Yes, Ms. Pazzo, and then Mr. Mudavaryan.
First of all, I want to take any opportunity I possibly can take to commend the excellent work that the Rose Garden Committee does. And we are so very lucky to have the residents of the city that are so dedicated to the Rose Garden and give so much of their free time. And not only that, spend that time fundraising for the betterment of city property. And I don't think we can thank that committee enough. That's number one. Number two, I think they bring in doing something along these lines. I agree with Ms. Porterfield that we need to have an educational component to it. But what we really need to keep in mind when we discuss this policy going forward is a lot of these photographic shoots hinge on a beautiful day, right? So we just have to decide what we're going to do when somebody has that, whether we give a time frame of a couple of days or what the case may be, because if it's pouring rain out during their appointment, that's, what do we do then? So we just need to think about that piece of legislation.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Mudavaryan, did you have, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Mudavaryan had a
I would like to join with the same sentiments and to commend the Rose Garden Committee for the tremendous job that they're doing out there, beautifying the city. And at the same time, I'm in total agreement of this proposal. And I'm not sure if I missed it. Is there a fee proposal being considered?
We just threw out a rough idea of $50, but that's something that we can certainly adjust to the council's whim, or not whims, but the council's, what the council would like is what I was trying to say.
And just to follow up on that also is that not only for a professional photographer, we should also charge a fee for any photo session there, because we may have maybe the wedding that they're using their private cameras. So we may want to consider on a broader scale and to make sure that that is captured in this, if we decide to move forward with this new proposal.
Ms. Patrick?
But let me, Ms. Porterfield, I'll come to you after the mayor, who was next in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate, Matt, your efforts, and Sean, yours. Sean, of course, the former city council member, and I'm sure he misses things back here with us tonight.
I remember.
We do have a fee structure in place. I was going to ask again what Mr. Mudavaryan asked, what the suggested price would be, because the relationship the city has with the Restoration Committee is we collect some of these fees, but then I think we turn them over at 90 cents on the dollar, 95 cents on the dollar. Is a little bit held back in case we have to refund any, but it's money that gets invested back into the Rose Garden. And it's, I think it's actually a good sign dealing with this problem of there's so many people who are trying to use the Rose Garden who are coming out there. And yes, it could be a part of the pandemic we're dealing with, but it also is a quality facility that has been restored by the team that Matt happens to lead now. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. Ms. Porterfield?
No, I was, well, actually to Mr. Mudavarian's comment. So just to clarify that if people currently want to have their wedding ceremony in the Rose Garden, we are charging them for that. Is that correct? So Mr. Mudavarian is saying if they just want to have their wedding at, whatever church and then come there for, to have a photographic session, whether with their camera, their iPhones or whatever, that we should charge for that as well. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that's what he's saying.
Mr. Mudavarian?
I think about professional events like a wedding or so, and no permit was pulled. Those are things we need to address as we move forward to educate the public in terms of permit is needed, and if they don't have then they need
Ms. Patrick?
Yes, Mr. Palomeni.
I would also echo Ms. Porterfield and Terrazzo's comments about signs. In fact, the mayor's office has already been asked for some signage for the Rose Garden because people have been climbing all over, like the fountains and other items in the Rose Garden, potentially damaging them, and just some signage to try to keep people off them so that they don't get wrecked.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ms. Patrick?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah. And Matt, you should apologize to both of you for questioning while you guys are on here. Sean, you should be questioning more than anybody else. What the heck is going back here? My apologies to both of you.
No problem.
This is just a site just for the numbers. But anyway, and I might have missed the comment. Now, this is just for professional folks. I mean, we're not talking about kids with the proms coming in with the prom cars and all that, where parents are taking photos, are we?
No, we're not. We're not talking about that. It's as Matt said earlier. It's the professional photographers, as he was mentioning, who come in with the professional photo shoots, who come in with the step ladders, the lighting umbrellas, the changing tents, who line up people, within half-hour shoots in an evening. We're not talking about the, family shots of proms, graduations, that type of thing. We're talking professional photographers who are charging folks to take pictures in the Rose Garden. That's the intent.
That's your committee for. We've been. She loves every rose that's there, but I'm wondering, could we have an app or something online? And I don't know where it's going to go to, but let's just say that photographer does show up and they do not have that permit. I'm thinking if we can have an app, the city have an app created where they can actually go on their phone or device and purchase that permit right there. On the spot. I mean, a wedding is not going to leave. No matter what you guys say, those people are not leaving. But I think it would be if we can create an app or to go on our city website directly to purchase this app, or the permit. I don't know, just something to think about. Who's the techie guy here on this thing? I don't know if it's any of you guys, but I just think that makes a little bit of sense. You know what I mean? I can buy it right there. Just kind of like the parking meters. You know what I mean? I get the app and I can buy the time. So my 2 cents. And again, thank you both, gentlemen.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Mr. Mudavarian.
No, I'm good. No,
okay.
I'm good.
Any other questions or comments? And I too want to add my thanks to the volunteers for everything that you do. I walk there and it's just beautiful all the time. So I appreciate what you're doing. Mr. Palmieri?
Yes, so it sounds like there's support for this. Could we have this in the agenda in 2 weeks, and maybe myself and you could work with the Rose Committee, have them put a draft, and we could send it to Mr. Colden, and then send it out to the council for examination if there's no objections.
Sounds good.
Ms. Patrick? Ms. Patrick?
Yes.
John, would you be able to work on an app or something online? Like I mentioned, if you just take a peek at it and see if that's feasible for us to do. Again, I'm all in support of this whole thing, but I just think that, if I'm there with my wedding party, folks, and I don't have the permit, and all of a sudden somebody comes up and says, I need it, well, what am I going to do? City Hall's closed. Just a thought. If you guys are working it out, I appreciate a little input. If you can take a peek at it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Sean O'Brien again. Just that we're just, it's, the volunteer would just go to the person and really inform them of, as like Matt mentioned earlier, that hey, this is what's out there, what you need to do. Obviously, we can't, if they're there, they're there. But the idea is to educate them, and then for them to get their permit, and then the code of conduct, code of etiquette that would go along with that. And that perhaps even something around that they could have around their neck as far as a colored coded pass or something that people could just look at real quick and say, okay, they're good, is something to think about. But we'll work with the council and to the administration, and we'll put something together and work with you all. And thank you for hearing us out. And is there a squeaky toy out there?
I'm sorry, guys. It's my puppy.
Okay.
It's his tail.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I keep muting myself.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, and we will get together shortly or soon to try to hammer out some details and address some of these issues. Okay. Could I have a motion to adjourn this committee?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'll call to order City Development and Planning. I believe the first two items, Mr. Colden, should be discussed in regular session.
Yes.
Thank you. The first is a public hearing on September 14th for flat rate permit fees for purchasers of city-owned houses. I assume this is just a line item space filler, reminder.
Yes, this is just a placeholder to inform us that we have a public hearing on the 14th.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. On to discussion of vacant properties, island upkeep, and dangerous stop sign or stop installation on Ivy Road. Mr. Kosher?
Thank you. And got several things here. And believe it or not, as we're meeting, I just got a call from two residents on Council and Ivy Road saying that debris has all been cleared out by our city crews. So I thank whoever took care of that for us today. But two residents called while we were in meeting thanking us. But, this is just something that I'm sure all the council members have been receiving throughout the entire year. The blight of our vacant properties, the grass on several of these houses well above 1.5 to 2 feet. The upkeep of our islands, again, many calls to myself, and again, I'm assuming you council members as well. But what can we do about this? What has been done? Have we hired more individuals? What's the status of our crews? And from what I understand, and regarding vacant properties, we can't even get to our own properties because we don't have the staffing in place. What they're doing is properties that are in violation that we can actually collect revenue from in order to send the SNAP crew there. In the meantime, we have all our other vacant properties that continue to be vandalized, and the grass continues to grow, and we just don't have the staffing or the crews to take care of it. I know as the council, we allocated $140,000 in a line item budget to hire minority and women-owned businesses to assist us on that. And I'm just looking for feedback from anybody here. What is happening and what's our plan in place moving forward? And I guess
Can we direct that? Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead.
I was asking if we can have the mayor address that or Mr. Lafont.
Again, I'm trying to manage a budget that is seriously deficient in revenue. I know some of you have come up with some suggestions, some have been far more removed from participating in what I would call realistic outcomes or managing through this. But if you have specific complaints, we try and follow up on it. But we're at the same time trying to maintain the fiscal integrity of the city.
Certainly understood there, Mr. Mayor. But again, the taxpayers' phone calls and emails continue at alarming rates. The other issue I want to bring up, hopefully Mr. LaFawn can address this, is our nuisance department. Apparently, they drove on Florence Avenue to an individual who's lived at that address for 35 years, and our individual came up and gave him a $50 fine for having his garbage cans on the side of his house, which he has had there for 35 years since he's resided there. My question, why are we issuing warnings or at least something to homeowners, letting them know that we have a situation here that they're not in compliance, and you have a 5-day, 7-day period to resolve it, and not giving these $50 tickets immediately? It happened at Mount Pleasant with snow removal. Over there in the Mount Pleasant area, I guess 3 of the property owners can clear their intersections out, and they're given $50 tickets. So, Mr. If you can address that, why aren't we given a notice or something saying you've been cited, you have 5 days or 7 days to resolve this before issuing that $50 ticket? Anybody want to comment? Or Mr. Colden, do you have any feedback, or anybody have a feedback? Mr. Mayor, somebody.
Mr. Lafont was on mute.
Yeah, I'm on mute. Can you hear me?
There you go. Good.
Yes,
Thanks.
yes,
Okay, I'm sorry. The administrative the $50 fee for issuing the citation. That's not the fine for the citation. The fine for the citation is after the 5 or 7 day grace period. If it's not done, a work order is then generated and a city crew will go there. The fine is the time and material for our crew to clean up and dispose of any debris. I don't, that is an administrative fee that's set. So the fine, that's not the fine. That's the administrative fee. So when they're issued a citation, there's going to be an automatic, administrative fee. When we do an area, if our but our nuisance or code enforcement officer goes out and blankets an area, in the city code, it does say that garbage cans have to be stored in the back of the house, unless you live on a corner property, because on a corner property, you'll be able to see the cans on a corner lot. So that is in the city code. So when the nuisance inspectors go out and they're doing a sweep of an area, they're writing people up for various violations. Those violations carry a administrative fee. So I have no right to waive an administrative fee. Call in and contest it. There is an administrative fee. If the work is not performed within the grace period, a work order is generated, and a city crew will get there when they can, based on the log, and that will turn into an MVP for the amount that time we spent, materials and debris we took away.
Understood. Ms. Perazzo or Mr. Multivaran, I'd really like to see if we can get this changed, or Mr. Colden, where instead of discharging this $50 administrative fee right off the bat to our homeowners, again, who've been there for over 30 years, this individual, to give that grace period first. And then we, again, with no administrative fee attached to that. And if we come back after that 5 days, then you're going to do whatever fees or fines are going to be attached to that. But I just think this is one of many, many times that we have had our city nuisance department go out there. And again, there's been many times where I've called code on an issue, and then they say, no, it's nuisance. But what is our procedure to change this if we need to do it in our charter, and any feedback from my colleagues on the council? I just think this is very unfair that we cited this on an individual who's a senior, by the way, senior citizen, and got cited for this.
So Mr. Rocco? Thank you. So, Mr. Gozier, to a couple of things. First of all, the vacant properties that we talked about and the island upkeep and all of that. So I do want to speak to that because I also get a lot of phone calls, emails, or just in-person visits when I'm grabbing a cup of coffee, doing whatever, to people about the vacant properties and how they're not being kept up. And with that, people are always also saying that, listen, I get a fine or fee, a whatever it's called, your administrative fee, for not keeping my property up. But yet the city isn't keeping theirs up. So we have to, I know it's a delicate balancing act, but we have to balance this because our city doesn't look good right now. So if we want the residents to do that, we need to do that as well. And in terms of the fees, and I'm not sure how we got to the $50 amount to write a piece of paper, but I agree that that we should give warnings. And to me, it doesn't matter. I'm not a respecter of a person. It should be across the board, regardless of who it is. But my question, though, is also when we talk about storing, Mr. LaFawn, storing them behind the house, there's some neighborhoods, I think of mine in particular, where that's really not, the back of the house is fine, but the house would be difficult based on where I live. So I think that, we really need to consider that, first of all, but I think that this needs to be throughout the city, because I drive around and I see numerous people having their garbage not only on the side of their house, I see them having it in the front of their house.
Well, this is all within the council's purview, right? We can first of all change the code about where garbage cans are located, and we can also change the waiting period for the fee. So what I would recommend is Mr. Gozier put together your ideas and present them to the council for discussion, and let's move forward to changing the code as the consensus to the consensus of the council. I just need to know, Mr. Colden, is this public hearing related because of a change to code, or is it something we can do by resolution?
From my view of this, it looks like there's going to be a section of code that would apply here, section 258, and I'd have to take a look a little bit more into this to see exactly how it should be structured. As it stands right now, I would say that you will need a public hearing. You would be modifying the city code. But that's, at first blush, it's the first time this has come before me. So I do want to take a deeper dive into this.
So shall we wait one cycle before we discuss, calling for a public hearing? Because there's some work that needs to be done here, right?
Oh, yes, Ms. Brazo. I agree 100%, Ms. Brazo. Thank you.
So we'll put this, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Mutavern.
Yeah, I was going to thank you for addressing that. We'll keep it fair on next cycle, and then we'll have more information, and then we'll call for the public hearing at that point in time. Just some comments in terms of vacant properties. Last year, I think, or the year before, if I'm not mistaken, we have increased the fee in terms of vacant properties. So with this increase in fee on vacant properties, there should be no reason why we're not cutting the grasses on these properties. So that will cover the costs of maintaining this property. So I would ask that and make sure that these properties are well kept because of the added fees. And if we're doing a sweep, we should not be selective in special neighborhood. If we're going on Florence Avenue or Florence Street, we should also go across the city and do sweep and violate, and give people violation in terms of garbage can or overgrown grass.
I agree that the city needs to take care of the properties the best that they can, but I have also to say that we are in dire circumstances right now. And, our SNAP crew has been, they can't keep up. I mean, they just can't keep up. There's not enough people, right? And so I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just talking reality here. I mean, as a council, we can sit here and say, oh, well, we need to keep the properties up and all that. But these guys are working there themselves hard, and it's just a lot. It's just a lot. And so I think we need to also, but that being said, then we shouldn't be going around finding people when there's a city property right down the street that's being kept up. I mean, it's dire circumstances for everyone, right? Everyone's trying to do more with less at this point. So we need to recognize that a little bit on our city crews, because they really are working hard, but it's a monumental task because we weren't able to hire all the seasonals that we've hired in the past.
And I would add
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That was Porterfield.
That's Ms. Porterfield, but I think that Mr. LaFawn speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. LaFawn.
And I will add that our SNAP crew has been ultimately busy helping our waste department since March with the COVID pandemic. We have a lot of absenteeism throughout our waste department. So we've had to tap other resources to keep the waste picked up on the city streets. So a lot of the parks personnel and a lot of the staff personnel, and there were days when we had only one person in our street department because we had to put people on the waste collection trucks. So that was a priority. The garbage has to be picked up today. We'd not be able to keep up if we started backlogging our collection routes. So we did fall behind. We fell behind like probably most of the country with regards to the COVID pandemic. And, we were out on quarantine, and we had to supplement the workforce for the waste with our SNAP people, our parks people, our water people, our sewer people, and our street people. There were days when we had 49 absenteeisms in the Bureau of Service. So when that happens, we have to pull our resources from other departments to get trash picked up in our waste collection routes. And that was the priority in those days.
Ms. Perazzo?
I believe Ms. Porterfield was next.
Ms.
And
Porterfield.
Ms. Patrick, I think, had something. I'll get to you, Mr. Hoover.
Yes. So Mr. LaFawn, I clearly understand, and you're to be commended for working with the resources you have. And I think that everyone understands it. And certainly, I'm not saying that our city crew isn't doing an excellent job with what they're doing. I think that they are. But my point, and I've actually, had this discussion with the mayor and sent information. We had talked about having some of these private businesses do some of this stuff, and we allocated money for that to happen. And I understand now we're in a different place, but quite frankly, that could have taken place earlier before we knew we were going to be where we are. And our taxpayers are coming to us saying that, this just it's got to get better. So even if we don't spend all of that money to get things under control, we know that the winter's coming and fall is coming, so we're not going to have as much growth. But right now, if we could allocate some of that money and bring in some of these small businesses who we won't pay like we would pay a major landscaper to get some of this under control, because things look horrible right now. And we understand about the staffing, about COVID and all of that. But I would implore the mayor that some of that money that we set aside, that we actually bring some of these small businesses in to do some of this work so we could improve the aesthetics of the city as much as possible, given the restrictive conditions we have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Patrick.
Yeah, again, I just want to say this is, I think, very similar to the conversation we had in terms of looking as a whole. And again, it'll be my first season going into the budget hearings soon, but there's this balance of staff in all these different departments, and given the budget crisis that we're facing, I think all of this is going to be impacted. I mean, which office, which department gets staff, doesn't get staff, all of this I think has to be looked at in one big picture. So that's, I think, one of the things that we were trying to say earlier in the meeting as well.
Thank you. Mr. Mutaverin?
Yes, one of my comments would be aligned with Ms. Porterfield in terms of we have a budget line that allocated X amount of money for to help to offset the backlog of these quality of life issues So, I just want to throw that out there. I mean, we are in a budget crisis, but can we take a portion of that line and to help backfill, with one or two, small business to help us, bring this under control? So why not use a portion of it? We're not asking, for all. I understand that there's setbacks and adjustments are being made on budget lines, and that is understandable. So, we should look at that. The other question I have for Mr. LaFont, recently there were some seasonal hires. Do you have an amount of personnel that was recently hired?
Pardon me?
The amount of seasonal staff.
We hire seasonal staff on an ongoing basis. We hired some, and give you an example. We hired 3 a couple weeks ago, and 2 stopped showing up after 1 day. So we try and reach out to get another 2 seasonals. So we, do hire some seasonal staff to help us as we do with parks and SNAP and waste collection. We have hired seasonal staff in the weeks, and didn't show up. They stopped coming to work. So we reach out and hire a couple more seasonals to replace the ones that left.
Okay, thank you.
It's sort of an ongoing process with seasonals. Some go back to school, so we have to hire a couple more. Some just, stop showing up.
Okay, and I think we just need to keep in mind as we go forward that yes, there is a line item, and yes, conceptually there's money that has been put aside for this, but when the revenue isn't coming in, then those line items look different, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to do our best for the residents of the city, but just because we put $140,000 on a line does not mean that the revenue is there to support it, and I think we need to keep that in mind, so just as we go forward, because although we put a budget forward, it really doesn't exist at this point because the revenue portion of it can't support the expense portion of it. So as we go forward, but Mr. Kosher, so you're gonna talk to Mr. Colden on this and get some framework together to consider?
Yes, thank you very much. I will certainly look into that, and thank you for the good conversation, Amber. This was very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this topic? Seeing none, I will ask for
on that topic, but I did want to mention one thing because I didn't know where I could fit it in, but we're getting ready to go into executive session. And just the fact that I am getting text messages that we're not up on OSM. It's kind of late in the game to say that, but I'm just seeing it now. I picked up my phone and that was there. So I think that our technical stuff is something we have to, we're going to have to really make sure that we get done correctly because people are saying they can't see us. Thank you for the opportunity.
So noted. Thank you. Mr. Colden, is there anything else that should be discussed in open session on the agenda?
I don't believe so. I believe the rest of the items should be discussed in executive session.
Okay, and because we'll be discussing property sales, we at this time will go into executive session. I'll ask for a motion to do so.
So moved.
And I will second. All those in favor? Aye. We're in executive session. Please hang up from this call and log in on the executive session meeting call.